For you and perhaps the Attorney General, the Justice Department recently received a criminal referral against New York Attorney General Letitia James for fraud. We haven't heard much about it. Could you or the Attorney General give us an update as to what's going on with that investigation?
Well, I don't want to get involved in something that Pamela is involved with. If you'd like to say something, Pam?
We have filed charges against this Letitia James. We will hold you accountable. You're next. Get ready. It's over. It ends, and we're coming after you.
And that is why today I am leading a lawsuit joined by Democratic attorneys general across the country.
Let's talk a little bit about Letitia James in particular, and the Letitia James scandal. What is the nature of the scandal, and what can be done about it?
Yeah, this is an expanding scandal even as we speak. You remember Letitia James? She's the Attorney General of New York. She's the person who said no one is above the law. She's absolutely right about that. Unfortunately for her, that includes her. So there is, as we now know, serial mortgage fraud on behalf. These are federal crimes. In her very first mortgage, she got a mortgage under the false pretenses that her father was her husband. So in other words, she used his balance sheet and his financials to qualify for the mortgage because she was only 24. On the mortgage, you can see that they list them as father and probably as man and wife, but on the title, they are accurately listed as father and daughter. That's mortgage fraud. She applied for a federal HAMP loan, which is a loan specifically for an investment property, but it is limited to 4 units. It has to be 4 units or less. I got this incorrect yesterday, so I want to correct myself. She applied saying that her unit only had her investment property only had 4 units, but in fact, it has 5. She has several mortgages for other properties in Virginia, which she describes herself as the current occupant. That gets you a different mortgage rate, but of course it's not accurate. But then most troubling, very recently, just weeks before Trump's so-called valuations trial, she signed a document, a sworn document, in which she obtained a mortgage for a property in Virginia, and she said as a condition of the mortgage that would become her principal home, her principal resident within 60 days. Well, if that's true, and it's long past 60 days, she would be ineligible to be the Attorney General of New York if she lives in Virginia. In fact, the way New York state law works, as soon as she declares herself a resident of another state, the office of Attorney General is automatically vacated. There isn't even a hearing. So either she's ineligible or she lied on this form in order to obtain a favorable mortgage rate. Either way, it's a serious federal crime. Yes, other people have gone to prison for this. These are just some of the areas of vulnerability. She clearly covered up sexual assault by her chief of staff, who happens to be a Muslim. She was sued in that action, 2022. And then only weeks ago, a Democrat-dominated appeals court did not kill the lawsuit, but dismissed her from it. This is what, among lawyers, is called wrongly decided. She did it. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. By the way, I have the names of all 3 women. Be great for a documentary. Anyway, so you have her covering up sexual assault, but wait a minute, isn't that what she drove Andrew Cuomo out of office over? So yet another example of Tish's hypocrisy. And then lastly, we've been doing a deep dive into her campaign finances, particularly through Act Blue. If you're familiar with Act Blue, it is a Democrat payment processing company. It's now in total array. They fired their all top executives. They're not commenting to the police. 19 state attorney generals are investigating them. But of those Letitia James donors who will talk to us, which is around 60% of those contacted, more than 70% of them will tell you they have never heard of Letitia James, they never made a contribution to her, never mind many contributions to her. This is fraud. So that research is still being conducted. Our good friend James O'Keefe has done some of this. My good friend Chris Gleason's done others, but now it is being done comprehensively. I think we will show that her campaign for Attorney General was almost completely fraudulently financed. And then, frankly, I had to go back and look at her campaign for city office. She was the city advocate, a job that is completely unnecessary and has no real responsibilities. And it appears to me that she did the same thing there, taking contributions that were illegal, laundering them through New York City residents, and then submitting those contributions for the New York City's 8-to-1 campaign finance matching program. That's also a crime. So, look, I think Letitia James is in big trouble. And she's the one who said no one is above the law. She said it's the art of the steal. Well, in fact, it is the art of the steal, but Dinesh, it looks to me like the person who's been stealing is Tish.
Look, she's got a lot of relationships. I haven't looked into all of them. I'm still focusing on Letitia. I certainly was thinking, like, where in the world did Letitia James get the very idea to investigate Trump for mortgage fraud? And I think we know the answer now. It's because since 40 years now, she is a serial mortgage fraud practitioner. And she figured, you know, if I do it, maybe we can get him for it. But I don't think she really had any evidence against Trump. He took out legitimate loans. When he took out loans for his large, $100 million buildings financing, the way it works is the banks ask the person taking out the loan to give their opinion of the value of the property. And the person provides an opinion with a disclaimer. That's what Trump did. Even in his trial, there was a disclaimer that said, do not rely on our figures. We're not professional appraisers. This is simply our opinion based on the comps in the area. And the banks went on to do their own appraisals. They don't rely on their mortgagees, guesstimates. So there was no crime. The lenders all said they got paid. They made money. They want to lend to Trump again. There was no injured party. It was absurd. It was just absurd. But it was part of a lawfare program that the Democrats instituted to get Trump, to get Biden reelected. It wasn't just New York. It was in Georgia. Of course, the special counsel Jack Smith in Florida with the classified documents hoax. It was a strategy that they knew that Biden's policies weren't working. We had massive inflation. We got wars abroad. We got an open border. And they felt that the only way to ensure Biden get reelected, turning out they were trying to get Kamala in instead of Biden at the very end, would be to eliminate through lawfare the Republican opponent. All of those efforts ultimately failed. And Trump, of course, was reelected. And we're seeing that these prosecutors like Jack Smith, Fannie Willis in Georgia, and Letitia, in fact, have their own legal problems now because they're getting the scrutiny that they would not have otherwise gotten had they not engaged in illegitimate lawfare to take away the right of the American people to vote for whoever they wanted to. So Letitia is part of a pitiful, illegal, unwarranted effort without precedent of one political party to prosecute the other political party's opponent to try to propel their failed candidate into another term in office. So that's what Letitia is experiencing now, is the scrutiny that she never would have gotten before.
So one thing I wanted to show everybody here is some of the work Sam's been doing. And he's been doing a forensic audit on the New York State Attorney General, who, I pointed out she was hanging out with known criminals and felons at this nightclub in the Bronx, Concha Frito, and she shouldn't even be doing that. But she's looking into her financials. Sam has found
a property in Norfolk, Virginia in 2020 for about $137,000, which was financed by a $109,600 loan from OVM. Normal. The mortgage was coded as a second home. However, on her financial disclosures to New York State, she lists it as an investment property. Red flag number one. Red flag number two is that mortgage does not show up on her disclosures to New York State. It simply vanishes. It doesn't exist according to her disclosures in New York State. Now, 3 years later, in 2023, she encumbers the property with two more mortgages. These mortgages total between $250,000 to $400,000. Those two mortgages show up on the New York State filings, but they don't show up on the title reports. In other words, it could be that she borrowed the money, but who gives a secured, unrecorded mortgage? It just doesn't make sense. The next red flag is this: when you take the totality of the mortgages, the original $109,000 mortgage, the other two mortgage, because she discloses ranges, she doesn't disclose specific amounts, between $250,000 and $400,000, you have $350,000 to $500,000 in mortgages on the property. However, you compare it to her stated value, which is 100 to 150, and you say to yourself, who the hell is lending money more than twice the value of the property? Now, I don't have subpoena power. Forensic accounting, when you lack subpoena power, is to look at their statements, kind of like when you were a cop. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
Yeah.
Same thing. I'm using her statements, her assertions against her. And I'm showing that whatever she says does not add up to everything else.
So there's certainly a discrepancy, and if anything, if no one would investigate, this would would be a state violation or also a federal violation? Because I see there's two different, because it's a campaign finance and there's also the title. So there's two different.
I'm not an attorney, but I would say to you, in my court, she is committing fraud, in my opinion.
I see. So she's definitely on terrible grounds. And I've seen,
but then again, the legalities, I'm not an attorney. It's just my opinion.
And also now leading up to this, you also discovered other things, correct? There was other things that you found, any other discrepancies with her?
Well, she has a home in Brooklyn. Okay. It's for family. She purchased it around 2000 when real estate values were relatively low compared to today. And as normal, the value has gone up, as every other home in Brooklyn. The problem is, in 2021, she valued the home between $2.25 to $2.5 million. In 2022, she valued the home between $3.25 to $3.5 million, almost a 40% spike in 1 year. At the time, she took additional mortgages on the property. Okay, but here is where it gets interesting. During that period where she claims, again, her own financial assertions, that the value of the property rose approximately 40%, New York City valued her property by 7% lower during the same period. Now, New York City is like the mafia when it comes to collecting money. They don't leave no stone unturned. They'll dig up your grave and pull out the gold shillings out of your teeth from your corpse. That's the way they are. They don't give ice in the winter. So my point is that how can the property go up 40% in value while New York City is assessing it 7% lower than the previous year?
Sam, you not only raise a good question, it also, I want to point out, as the Attorney General, she can't investigate herself, because clearly this sounds like something that the state would have to look into. And this sounds like something the federal government would have to look into, because there's something cool under the statutes, because I pled guilty to it, I know.
It's called mail and wire fraud, using the instrumentalities of interstate commerce to send a false statement. To send false statements, and in this case, it is within the realm of the federal government because this is on the internet. This is these assertions are available across straight lines, etc. Well, again, I'm not an attorney. I could be a little bit off on the law, but the reality is I'm not off on the numbers, and I'm not off on the inconsistencies.
No, you're the people's comptroller. I'm being honest with you. That's your nickname in the hood. We'll say you're the people's comptroller. I think this not only needs to be investigated. It's funny to me how she said that President Trump committed the same violation she actually did commit, whereas President Trump did not commit that violation. Because
I have not followed that case very closely because I'm more of a my head is in the numbers kind of a guy.
Yeah,
but people have brought up that there are similarities, and I leave to you to opine on.
No, I tell you, listen, you are God's gift to numbers because without you, nobody would have found it. Everybody would have just continued on. And when Letitia James was I say she was in front of that courthouse acting crazy. And it's funny that you did put a post out. She should actually be worried about her own criminality instead of worrying about Elon Musk and Doge, because you should actually be working for the Doge in the state of New York, because I'm sure you could dig up even more bones that she's buried as far as all her finances, because this sounds like a soon-to-be investigation. That's what it sounds like to me, Sam. I think you're a genius, you know?
I'm just a retired crook, and I don't want to work for Doge. I just want to be a lone wolf, answerable to myself, and do whatever I need to do to get things done. If Doge wants to take the work that I do and bring it to a different level, if the Justice Department wants to subpoena people, that's for them to do. Me, I'm just going to go through the numbers and keep on keeping on. And if the federal government doesn't do anything about it, I hate to say it to you, shame on them.
That's all for today. Thank you. If you want global news to keep you up to date on any new developments, please subscribe our channel and forward our content with your friends on social media and email. Thank you very much for keep supporting me. Stay safe, be blessed. Namaste.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.